welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So, the film that I will be discussing is Jawbreaker. So, Jawbreaker is a 1999 crime comedy film. It is written and directed by Darren Stein, who's known for films such as Sparkler and Put the Camera on Me. The film stars Rose McGowan, Rebecca Gayheart, and Julie Benz. Here is the synopsis. When an exclusive clique of teenage socialites accidentally murders their best friend Liz, played by Charlotte Ayana, on the morning of her birthday, the three girls responsible, Courtney, played by Rose McGowan, Julie, played by Rebecca Gayheart, and Marcy, played by Julie Benz, conspire to hide the truth. As the trio make over nerdy reject Fern Mayo, played by Judy Greer, and groom her to take Liz's place, crack police detective Vera Cruz, played by Pam Grier, launches an investigation that will turn Regan High School upside down. So the film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 30th, 1999. It was released in theaters on February 19th, 1999. It had a budget of $3 million. It made over $3 million domestically. It opened at number 13 with over $1.6 million. It was beaten by films including Payback, Message in a Bottle, and My Favorite Martian. In terms of critical reception, it has a 3.4 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated an MTV Movie Award for Best Villain for Rose McGowan. And at the time of this recording, it's available to stream on CTV and is on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's get into first discoveries. So I think I did see this movie on TV at the time it came out. I don't remember my initial thoughts, but I recall that it was quite intense to watch, mainly because of all like the different shots of the jawbreaker and that the fact that the jawbreaker is very hard to chew on essentially kind of which makes you question what's the point of having a jawbreaker as a candy. But yeah, I just remember like it was quite the intense movie when I saw it years ago. But rewatching it now for the podcast, I'm like, oh, I really dig this movie because it works as a dark comedy, so to speak, as a teen movie. Because usually with the teen movies, at least that I've seen, tend to be lighter if we're going on the comedic side. But here's a dark comedy. I would say it works because it definitely goes in dark directions given the premise of the movie. And I thought everyone, the cast did a great job. Darren Stein did a great job with the screenplay and the direction of the movie. And it's easy, I find, to note that there are some parallels this movie has with Mean Girls, but yeah, I would say no surprise that with this movie over time became the cult classic, even though it didn't do well in theaters at the time of its release. So let's get into the highlights. So let's go with the title Jawbreaker. So I imagine like when you see the title Jawbreaker, you immediately think of the candy. As I mentioned, it's very hard to chew because it's so hard, and if you try to chew it hard, you'll get severe injured with your jaw essentially. And but even though like it's the candy, like there is an importance to the title. So I think clearly, in a way, it's the MacGuffin because it's the object that was used to kill Liz essentially unintentionally when she's inside the car. And then, of course, it comes back up because with the detective Vera Cruz is investigating Liz's death, and that whole interrogation sequence that Cruz has with the ladies. It's magnificent to watch as they all get quite intimidated, I would say, by the detective. But but yeah, also too, I guess from a thematic standpoint, it kind of represents the difficulty that the main characters essentially have to endure as they try to deal with the aftermath of Liz's death in their own ways. And also too shows the patience, I guess, that with a few of the characters had to go through in order to achieve their purpose. So Julie, played by Rebecca Gayheart, so after Liz's death, she leaves the group because she can no longer go with Courtney's direction, so to speak, and and clearly Courtney's not going to take accountability and wants to frame some random person for Liz's death. So essentially, she had to try to figure out a way to expose Courtney, and the card, the birthday card, comes to play with the voice message that Courtney accidentally records. And when that reveal happens towards the end, I'm like, that's magnificent to watch. Fern, played by Judy Greer, so she's essentially like the nerdy type character, and it seems like her character has, I don't know if it's like an infatuation with Liz, whether that's either strictly platonic or it could be sexual. That's left up to interpretation. For me, it seems like it goes on the lines, it's kind of leans towards sexual. Because when we hear like her narration at the beginning, the way that she pronounces Liz's last name Per. It's also funny with the last name Per with two R's, like Per. I can't do the right now, but but yeah, I found that was intriguing. And then we see there's a moment like when Fern has to bring Liz's homework. She's like trying to quickly fix herself. She removes a retainer off her mouth, like she wants to impress Liz, essentially. I think she goes the extra mile because Liz, out of the four, was like nice to her. We saw at the beginning, and which makes you wonder why Liz is a part of that group. But but regardless, I guess it was nice that a person noticed Fern, because Fern is essentially always in the background, left alone, and all that stuff. But yeah, interesting journey that Fern goes through, where she's kind of bullied into getting the makeover by Courtney, so that she doesn't reveal what she saw at Liz's house, and she becomes Violet. The name itself is interesting, Violet. I never heard that name before. It kind of sounds like Violet, but with the et, Violet. And the way that it's spelled is with a Y, so it's Vylettee, as opposed to, let's say, Violet or Te. So I found that's funny. And what else? The cast, I would say it's a solid cast. As I've mentioned, everyone did a great job with their performances. The ones I want to highlight specifically: Rose McGowan, of course, as Courtney. I would say this is the first role that I've seen of hers where she is acting as a villain. Because I remember her mostly from Charmed. I mean, that was a good show back in the day. Remember, used to watch those like on Fridays on CTV channel. But yeah, I remember her, yeah, from Charmed. Oh yeah, also too with the first Scream movie. I always forget that she was in the first Scream movie, but but yeah, usually like I would see her in more of the heroic roles. Also too, yeah, with Grindhouse of Planet Terror, which I did covered in the podcast previously. Yeah, I like how with her character, she's quite the femme fatale, so to speak, with the way that she dresses and presents. herself essentially. I would say there was a moment was quite funny when she's spending time with her boyfriend. Is it Dane or Dante? I can't remember his name. But when when she's using the popsicle, the orange popsicle, I found that whole bit was hilarious. But essentially, for character, she does what she can to get what she wants, whether it's to use her wit, her charm, or like her how can I say it, her physicality, so to speak, Courtney's a character where you want to be on her good side because if you're on her bad side, that's bad news. And Fern learned that the hard way when essentially everyone wants to be around Violet as opposed to with Courtney. And too bad when Fern gets humiliated with her old photos plastered all over school. In a way, like Fern should have seen that coming, but yeah, no surprise that it happened that way. And I guess in a way that served as Fern's like wake up call to show that yeah, that Courtney is not her friend, even though Courtney will say that, but in reality, no. but but yeah, like Rose McGowan as Courtney is quite the performance, I would say. Also, too, want to highlight Judy Greer as Fern. Um, I would say also is another good performance by Judy Greer. I found like it was hilarious that when she wears a brown wig at first is clear you could clearly tell that it's a brown wig. But yeah, like when she does the transformation as Violet, I feel like it's a different side to what I've usually see with Judy Greer with what I see on with her work. And and I bet she had fun playing the two sides to the character. So yeah, that was cool to unfold. Also too, yeah, like it was interesting to see Tatiana Ali, who of course you may know her as Ashley from The Fresh Prince of Bel Air. So yeah, like that was interesting. When I first saw this, I'm like, oh, that was it's cool to see Ashley from Fresh Prince of Bel Air in this movie because usually with that cast outside of I would say Will Smith, Alfonso Ribeiro, and James Avery. You don't really see much of them in roles outside of the show, and yeah, it was just great to see her in this movie. So she essentially plays one of the cool kids at school. Her character is Brenda. And it's funny at one moment, like she tells Julie to not sit in Violet's seat, that was hilarious to see. Also, too, Pam Grier. I mean, it's always nice to see Pam Grier on screen because here she plays, I would say, a person of authority as Detective Vera Cruz, and she essentially is like a no nonsense detective, essentially, and loved how she with the use of the jawbreaker that she uses to intimidate our flawless four. That's brilliant to see there. And also too, lastly, Carol Kane as Miss Sherrod. Like she was a delight to watch on screen. And it was funny the one moment when she's in the bathroom and she notices Courtney dressing provocatively, essentially tells her to cover up because it's not a brothel. That's hilarious. Also, too, I want to note as a highlight the screenplay. I thought it was nicely well written. For a teen movie, it's quite cheeky, I would say, and witty. Yeah, the dialogue is really illustrates that. I would say, particularly with Courtney's dialogue throughout the whole movie. Loved how like as a teen movie, it's yes, it goes dark involving the murder, but it's also quite like hilarious too at the same time. And also love that it provides commentary on what it means to be popular, essentially, and also to the importance of friendship. Because as Vera Cruz notes, that a friend is someone that's, is willing to have your back, essentially, and friendship is both ways. Is two ways. It's not one way, essentially. And yeah, like with being popular, it's cool to get attention, it's cool for people to notice you. But at the same time, people will always be coming for you once you're at the top, essentially. It's kind of, it sucks to be popular because all the attention is on you, because as much as they want to pull you up, they want to pull you back down. And with Fern, she kind of learns that the hard way, like once, she gets on Courtney's bad side. And yeah, like I find with Liz, she seems to be the odd one out amongst the friend group, because it makes you wonder, like, how did she become a part of this group? I don't know, unless, if let's say she was similar to Fern, where she gets transformed, but she's able to, let's say, maintain her personality, which I guess doesn't, which clashes with what Courtney wants to do. And so that's left up to interpretation, but just makes you question, why is Liz friends with these people? At least Julie is a bit more understanding, but Marcy is just willing to follow whatever Courtney does, essentially. So yeah. And let's talk about the Mean Girls. This movie came out in 1999. Mean Girls was '04, so just a few years. I won't be surprised if the people that worked on Mean Girls were influenced by this movie. So, first off, with this movie, our group is called the Flawless Four, even though it's more like a three. But anyways, they're the Flawless Four. While with in Mean Girls, we have the Plastics. So, if you remember the Plastics, so that was with Regina George, Gretchen Wieners, and Karen Smith. And Katie, of course, is included in the group. While here, our flawless four is Courtney, Marcy, Julie, Liz, who's passed away in this movie, and then Fern gets introduced into the group, essentially. So, Courtney is, you could say, is similar to Regina George. Both of them, they lead their respective groups and kind of have like this no nonsense attitude, essentially. But I would say Courtney leans more towards the dark side for obvious reasons, given the premise of the movie. Um, Marcy is similar to Karen, because both of them are like the airheads, essentially. But I would say with Karen, at least she's willing to stand by her principles. Like when her and Gretchen, they kick out Regina for not following the rules of the group. And Julie is, I would say, similar to Gretchen, where both of them are willing to stand up to the leader of the group, essentially. But Julie, she leaves the group, while Gretchen stays in the group. And then, of course, Fern is like Katie Heron. And it's funny. It's funny that, like, Katie, I guess both of them are kind of like the loner type characters at first, but at least with Katie, she gets accepted, like, at first, I would say, by Janice, Ian, and Damien, before the Plastics enter the picture. While with Fern, I guess she's been in the studio for a long time, but people, I guess, they just care less to pay attention to Fern because she's a nerd and all that stuff. But because of like the situation, she gets thrust into the group and does this whole makeup makeover, and things change for Fern essentially. But yeah, I found those are interesting parallels. Plus, also too, both movies have their hallway walks with music. So with Jawbreaker, of course, we have Yoo-Hoo by Imperial Teen, which I would say is a quite catchy tune. And I just saw before recording, there were the music videos on YouTube, and Rose McGowan is in that music video where essentially she holds the band hostage inside her home, and shenanigans ensue for that video. And in Mean Girls, they have Pass That Dutch by Missy Elliott, catchy tune with that one. But I would say that one is more comedic, while with Jawbreaker is a bit more taken seriously because they have a bit more attitude, I would say. And both of our lead characters, so Fern and Katie, I guess they both do narration. But I would say with Fern is limited to the beginning of the movie when she's introducing the characters essentially. While with Katie, it's she does narration throughout the whole movie to share, I guess, her perspective on the school and everything that goes on there. Um, Also, too, as highlights, there were some interesting moments. So when Courtney shares like her plan to frame some random guy for Liz's death, so they showed like the outside of this bar called Girl Talk, and it's hilarious that with the sign it has like the lipstick, the lips with the red lipstick on the sign. That's hilarious. But then when we go inside the bar, it's a lot of sleazy older men, which really is the opposite of a bar that you think. Yeah, it's called Girl Talk because you think that with a bar called Girl Talk, it'll be like a female bar. But no, it's a lot of men in that bar. So in a way, that kind of reminded me of this moment in the movie Rat Race when the daughter of the family, they wanted to pass by a sign, this Barbie museum that's they noticed through a sign, and it turned out that it's not the museum with the Mattel dolls, but it's essentially this museum that's filled with Nazi memorabilia. That's hilarious there. But yeah, interesting. Like with the contrast with that moment in the movie, and also, to another interesting moment is that at prom, I noticed some of the balloons, there were balloons within balloons. I just wondered how that works in practicality because maybe, I don't know, or maybe unless if, let's say, you put a smaller balloon inside the big balloon, both inflated, but then use air or whatever to blow them up at the same time. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I just don't know. But anyways, I've thought that was interesting moment there in the movie. Um, and also too, I enjoyed, of course, when Courtney gets exposed. I mean, that was a long time coming for the character essentially, because once she decided to go down that path, framing people, bullying people, essentially, karma was coming for her essentially, and it did. And then once when the message kept playing, people were throwing their flowers towards her, and then it ends with Julie taking the Polaroid picture of Courtney that ends up being in the yearbook. Interesting. Which leads to my next point, that the ending could be, I guess, open for interpretation. Because yes, Courtney ends up being exposed, but also it makes you wonder what is her fate at the end. Like, did she actually get arrested for the murder, or like did she, let's say, I don't know, get expelled from school, or let's say nothing happened, but she's no longer popular. Who knows? That's left up into interpretation, I suppose. I would love to think that justice is served where she gets arrested and all that stuff, but who knows? It's open for the people to decide. So let's get into the lowlights. I only really had one that I could come up with, but I found, yeah, it was quite unbelievable for people to not recognize Fern prior to the makeover, because it seemed like people assumed that she was a new student, even though she's been a student there for a long time. But I guess because they didn't pay attention to her, or she was in the background, that you know they thought she was a new person. I don't know, but I just found it was hilarious the way that they treat her, especially after the makeover, and then once Courtney did what she did with the posters, is when people realized that was Fern. So I thought it was hilarious. So let's get into the trivia. So there was a lot of fun facts that I found for this movie. So apparently, initially, the director Stein, he conceived this as a horror movie, because apparently the final script instead adopted prominent elements of dark comedy and teen films of Stein, drawing inspiration from Heather's, as well as elements of Carrie and the films of John Hughes. He explained that his concept for the film as the Jawbreaker just came to represent the duality of the poppy sweetness of the girls of high school and of youth versus the whole idea that this thing could break your jaw. Interesting. Also, too, Stein brought his script to executives at Columbia TriStar, who agreed to finance the film if he could cast Natalie Portman, Kate Winslet, or Rose McGowan. The role of Julie originally went to Rachel Lee Cook, who was eventually replaced with Rebecca Gayheart because the producers felt she did not have the right chemistry with the two other actresses. Gayheart had auditioned for the roles of Fern and Marcy before she was selected for Julie. Marilyn Manson, who was then dating Rose McGowan, agreed to appear in a non-speaking cameo role. Interesting. Natalie Portman and Kate Winslet, they're great actors in their own right, but I don't know. Assuming if they were going for the same role, I don't know how it would have worked with either or. I think Rose McGowan was the right choice for the role. With Rachel Lee Cook as Julie, maybe that could have worked, but yeah, I think Rebecca Gayheart did a great job with the role as Julie, and Marilyn Manson, I thought, did a great job with his cameo as the guy that unfortunately gets framed for Liz's death. But yeah, yeah. Also, too, Rose McGowan felt that the line "Life's a bitch, then you die" was a cliche and didn't want to say it, but Stein insisted on it. McGowan decided to recite the line with as little verve as possible in the hope that it would get cut, but since the exchange between Courtney and Julie was shot in a single take, they couldn't edit it out. Many viewers thought her blase delivery was intentional, and the line has become an oft quoted fan favorite. Interesting. Interesting. Also, too, Judy Greer said that when she was dressed as Fern, nobody on set paid her any attention. When she transformed into Violet, all of a sudden everyone paid attention to her. However, the men on set seemed more timid while approaching her as Violet. Hmm. 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 Also, too, the scene where the actresses strut down the hallway in slow motion to Imperial Team's Yoo-Hoo has become a signature feature of the film, drawing homage in film and TV, most notably Mean Girls, which we discussed earlier, and being parodied in films like Not Another Teen Movie. Alrighty. Also, too, Connie Francis did not approve the use of her song Lollipop Lips in the film, which was used without her permission and was heard during a sex scene. Francis filed two lawsuits over the unauthorized use of her song In the movie, in 2002, Frances sued her record company, UMG, for allowing several whole songs to be synchronized to sexually themed movies. Jawbreaker was specifically mentioned by name in a lawsuit. Frances was unsuccessful, and the judge threw the case out of court. The second lawsuit involved Frances suing the producers of Jawbreaker for the unauthorized use of lollipops in the film. Interesting. In 2020, there were efforts to adopt Jawbreaker into a musical. On July 29th, 2010, a Los Angeles concert presentation occurred starring Shoshana Bean, Margarita, and Jenna Lee Green. Original film writer-director Darren Stein returned to write the book while Jeff Thompson and Jordan Mann wrote original music and lyrics. Jen Bender directed production with musical direction by Adam Goodman. And lastly, it was announced in February 2017 that the film will be reimagined as a TV series for E! Darren Stein was set to write and produce the series, but no further developments were made. Interesting. Because I mean, if they're still, let's say, planning to do like a TV series or some follow up, I mean, it'll be cool to see where the characters are at currently. Um, I find that'll be more interesting as opposed, to, let's say, they were to do like a remake or a reboot. But yeah, we'll wait and see if that were to happen. All right, so should this movie be rediscovered? And I say yes, why not? Because I find it's nice to see a teen movie that leans towards the dark side without going fully dark. I thought, yeah, everyone did a great job with the movie. And yeah, no surprise that this movie is a cult classic. So there's that. All right, so that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you could find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Numpy Malloy. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to support the podcast via donation and look at exclusive posts there. Join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is our community group on the official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the feature poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser, you can leave a review and rate the podcast. And submit questions, comments, or suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on our link tree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. All right, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, and I hope to catch you on the next one.